Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Stadium Showdown, your in-depth look at the future home of the Cleveland Browns. And in this episode, we are going to be breaking down the decision from the Senate. They voted to approve their version of the budget, and within it, a very different payment plan than what we have seen from the House and from the governor as well. 19's Dan DeRose was in Columbus for the vote. He spoke with lawmakers about why they believe this plan is the best plan for not only Ohio, but for the Browns as well.
By a vote of 23-10, which means one Republican did vote no on this version of the Senate's budget, it does pass. Now, this is 2 years worth of state budget. It's everything from education to health care to taxes. But yes, it does include on the Senate side using $600 million from the unclaimed money fund for the Browns Brook Park project. Now, what happens next? They go to committees because now both the Senate and the House. Remember, the House has their plan of using $600 million worth of bonds or loans. They will sit in a room together for the next week or two and hammer out either negotiations or compromise. We were able to ask Senator Serino about that process. He's the Republican and also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, two very different ways to pay for Brown Stadium here. The bonds, your idea of using unclaimed funds. What gives here? I mean, you go to committee now, you work with senators and House members. Who gives? Where's the middle ground here?
Well, we'll see how conference goes. That's why it's a conference, and so we're going to take our different views. I really think that both the governor and the House, when they look at the three comparative ways to do it, one that raises taxes, one that spends $400 million on bond debt service, I think the solution should be pretty clear. But we'll see. We have to persuade one another on a number of issues in conference.
Are you willing to give?
On this one, I don't know. I would not easily go to a bond deal, certainly because of the expenses. And our caucus does not really like to raise taxes. So we're going to argue pretty vehemently for our.
That means there is a lot of work to do in those committees, a lot of compromising, and it's going to happen very quickly. Speaking with Senator Serino, he said that they would like this to then go back to the House and back to the Senate for a final vote by June 24th or 25th, because then it has to get to the governor's desk by at least June 30th. In Columbus at the State House, Dan DeRose, 19 News.
For the last 2 months, Brook Park has been embedded in the Capitol, going door to door, speaking with lawmakers to try and ensure that they vote to approve the Browns funding within the budget. And of course, on Wednesday, that is when that vote took place. And that is where the mayor of Brook Park was. Dan DeRose spoke with him shortly after the vote about why he believes this is necessary and also what comes next.
We feel good. We've been working really hard on this project. We're excited, and we're glad that we got through this next phase and now on to conference committee.
You've been spending a lot of time here in Columbus. Are you tired of this, or is it for a pretty damn good game?
I'm excited. You know, we're really excited about this, and we're glad to work down here on this because we're bringing a great project to Northeast Ohio.
We heard a lot of the Democrats blast that the Haslams are asking for $600 million from the state level. Where do you stand on this, and where's Brook Park's contribution in all of this?
Well, we welcome this, the scrutiny. We like that. Let's check everything out from A to Z. We like how the Senate is going to be funding this. We like their process. We think that was very responsible. Once we get through the state level, we will work on filling the rest of that gap up in Brook Park.
You're obviously on the local level. We have no idea how the state, or how the Senate and the House are going to hammer this out, whether it's bonds or whether it's unclaimed funds. And then it has to go to the governor. This is all going to happen fairly quickly, in about the next 2-3 weeks.
Absolutely. So we're excited. We'll continue to work down here, answer questions, testify when needed, interview with the different folks that we need to. We've been meeting a lot with the individual legislators, and we've been having a lot of success with, educating them on the project. And I think people are understanding it as a economic development project. A lot of time when you talk to legislators, you'll say, what are you here for? They want to do economic development. You ask them, what is economic development? They say jobs. Well, the way we look at this project, this is, yes, we're bringing jobs in, but we're also bringing visitors to the region that are going to be spending money in the county.
So we learned two new things there from the mayor of Brook Park. First, they very clearly prefer the Senate's plan over the House or the governor's. And second, they will continue to have that presence in Columbus until the budget is official. And coming up after the break, Cleveland City Council not too pleased about that Senate vote, how they feel about Brook Park's presence in Columbus, and the pressure that it's applied. Welcome back. The Senate approving the budget and, of course, with it, the Browns funding. Another blow to the city of Cleveland and Cleveland City Council. They flat out don't like Brook Park's presence in Columbus and feel it's been unfair. 19's Caitlin McCarthy has the story.
This will go down famously as a horrible idea, and people will wonder for generations why we did this. That's how bad of an idea this is, and that's the cliff that we're standing on deciding whether or not to jump.
It's a hot button issue, whether taxpayers should fund a dome stadium in Brook Park. After the state Senate passed the budget, which includes funding for this project, Cleveland City Councilman Chris Harsh still believes it's a bad idea.
In a nutshell, if they do it, it will be a failed development project, and it will be the most expensive I told you so in the history of Ohio.
Regardless of the economic impact a Browns move would have on downtown Cleveland, Harsh says the Browns should foot the bill for 100% of the dome stadium, not 75%.
The Hasms are worth $8.5 billion. If a $2.5 billion investment was profitable, they would just do it on their own. They don't need our money. If they looked at this and they penciled it out and they said, oh, this is a profitable investment, they could just do it without asking for any tax money at all. But they've never proposed that, ever. And that's because it's not a profitable idea.
The timing of this potential move is what stings the most for the city of Cleveland. The current stadium is on track to be completely paid off the same season the Browns could kick off in Brook Park.
Right when we are about to pay off the entire thing in 2028 is when they propose to leave. This is like the equivalent of buying a new car, and after 5 years of car payments, deciding now it's time to buy a bigger, more expensive new car, instead of driving the one you already paid for.
If there's a future without the Browns in Cleveland, what would that future look like for the city of Cleveland?
So without the Browns playing downtown, we have no reason to have the stadium. The NFL is the biggest game in town, and we all know that, right? They're the only thing that consistently put 60+ thousand people in a stadium in the dead of winter. If they leave, we'll have to tear it down, and that's a $50 million bill. And $50 million to tear down a stadium the day after we finish paying it off is a slap in the face to the Cleveland taxpayers who put it there in the first place.
Despite the vote in the state capitol, both the city and the Browns are waiting on several lawsuits to be resolved to determine if a move can take place. Reporting in downtown Cleveland, Caitlin McCarthy, 19 News.
So who have we not heard from this week? Well, we reached out to Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne, the Haslams, and Mayor Justin Bibb. All three either declined to give comment or have not gotten back to us as of this show airing. These are all groups that we have heard from multiple times throughout this process, so we're hoping to get an update from them following the very important Senate vote. But if you want to hear from any of them previously on any of the topics related to the Stadium Showdown, you can go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now for every single previous episode of the Stadium Showdown. So many of them have been so outspoken. Of course, we're going to have much more from the Stadium Showdown at the link on your screen right now. After the break, we break down a timeline of when the funding could be finalized. Welcome back. We now know there are 3 official ways that the state funding could go to the Browns' new stadium: the House, the Senate, and the governor. So we want to break down individually each of the 3 so you understand which one potentially it could be when the governor does sign off on the funding. So let's start with the House. The House proposed a $600 million plan. That'd be $600 million in bonds that would be paid from new taxes created at the stadium and the surrounding area of the stadium, basically the whole plot. The Haslams would then put $50 million in escrow, essentially as insurance in case the taxes from the stadium could not pay back these $600 million over a 30-year period. This plan, I think is important to note, was supported by the Haslams, was brought up by the Haslams. They initially had proposed this. The House then tweaked it a little bit. Let's go to the Senate. This is the one that was proposed and accepted this week. $600 million total is what they would offer to the Browns. This would be from the Department of Unclaimed Funds. Think of insurance claims, think of bank accounts, things like that. If after a 10-year period they are unclaimed, that money would then go toward the potential new stadium. All of this would get paid back, similar to the House proposal, with new taxes from the site, again, from the Brook Park site. The Haslams would have $50 million in escrow, $50 million in credit, basically doubling the insurance policy in this. This would also double the amount of time they would have to have it paid back. But again, the insurance policy on this is much larger from the Haslams. And then finally, we have the governor's proposal. That would be an increase in sports gambling tax, going from 20 to 40%. This would not be paid out by those gamblers. This would be paid out by the companies. Think FanDuel, think DraftKings. They would have to cover that difference. Then from there, this new sum would be used to help pay for the $600 million for the Brown Stadium. But it's not all. The governor would also use this new revenue source to pay for other stadiums as well. There's also a stipulation in this one that 40% of the stadium is the max that the state could be able to cover. Everything else has to come from private funding, from the owners, from people like that. So those are the 3 main options. Again, I want to show you this: the House, the Senate, and the governor's plan. So how do we get an answer as to which one is going to be chosen? The timeline here is very, very specific because we have such a short amount of time between right now and when the budget needs to be finalized. 19's Dan DeRose explains.
As Jeff just walked you through, there are now 3 plans. So how do we get from the House plan, the Senate plan, and the governor? How does it get whittled down until we finally find out how the state plans to give the Browns money for their project? Let's get to the what's next and how this process plays out. It is a little bit different, and that's what's going to make the next 2 weeks very interesting. So the House and the Senate are going to go into committees. It's one of those rare times where usually the House members stay on one side, the representatives stay on one side of the State House, and the senators stay on the other side of the State House. This is a rare time that they sit down in committees together. You will have representatives and senators sitting shoulder to shoulder, debating, negotiating, compromising. Who's going to win? Is it going to be the House's plan? Is it going to be the Senate's plan? That's where they will hammer this out over the next 2 weeks. Once they come to a consensus, it has to then go back to the House because they're essentially making changes to the state budget, House Bill 96. So when you make changes, you have to re-vote on it. So it's going to have to go back to the House, and they'll vote either yes or no. It's actually either a vote of up or down if you want to get technical. And there are no amendments. They can't tack anything on at this point. Once it gets to the House floor for the second vote, it's either an up or a down. Once they pass, then it has to go across the hallway, across the rotunda to the Senate, where they too will vote up or down, no amendments, no changes. Because again, if you change something, you have to start all over. I was talking to Senator Jerry Serino. He is the head of the Finance Committee, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. They are hoping that those votes can happen somewhere June 24th or 25th. That gives us about a week and a half, 2 weeks for these conferences to get everything, these committees, to get everything absolutely hammered out. And by the time it goes to the floor, they vote yes or no, then it goes to the governor. Now, this looks like if they vote on this date, they'll have it to the governor before the official deadline of June 30th. Because remember, fiscal year 2026, which is where this budget starts, kicks in July 1st. And there are payments. There's money that has to go out starting July 1st. So if they get it to the governor early, he can look at it and he can line item veto anything. If he doesn't like the plan that they come up with, whoosh, takes a pen and he crosses it out. Now that's not the end of it. If he does veto, it can go back to the House and the Senate and they can override the governor. They can say, great, you're the head of the Republicans, you're the head of the state. We don't like that you just vetoed what we did. But if it goes to the House, you now have to get a 3/5 majority vote in both the House and the Senate to override the governor's veto. Looking at the number of Republicans in both the House and the Senate, they have enough there to override the veto without a single Democrat voting for this. But you would have to have just about every Republican in the House and the Senate vote to override the governor. Would they have enough votes? We'll have to wait and see. It may not even come to that. It may get to the governor. He may say, okay, this is a compromise, and let's move forward. Dan DeRose, 19 News.
All right, Dan, thanks so much. And if you at home have any questions you want us to answer on air regarding the Stadium Showdown, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. That will allow you to ask any question that you have, get sent right to my inbox, and we could answer it on the next episode of the Stadium Showdown. And that is it for our latest episode of the Stadium Showdown. Thank you so much for watching. We are getting very close to that June 30 deadline. That's when we'll officially know how the stadium will be paid for. Of course, if you want to watch any of our previous coverage or see anything related to the Stadium Showdown, scan the QR code on your screen right now. For now, I'm Jeff Sloss of 19 News. Have a great day.